Welcome back. Game balance is another term you've probably heard before, but if I asked you to define what it means, what would you say? What does it mean for a game to be balanced? Or sometimes we'll even talk about part of a game being balanced, like a specific item or character. And if we do that, are we talking about the same thing as if we're talking about the whole game being balanced? And how does a game designer balance a game anyway? In this video, we're going to talk about game balance, what it is, why it's important, how we can tell if a game is balanced, and what to do when it's not balanced the way we want in order to meet its design goals.
So by now we've talked about kinds of fun, kinds of players, kinds of playtesting, so you might not be surprised to learn there are different kinds of balance. Like the word fun, balance is used a lot, so when talking about balance, it's important to be clear what we're even talking about. We might say that a game is balanced, so we can talk about the balance of a game overall. Generally, this is used in PvP games to mean that given equal skill at the start of a game, everyone has an equal shot at winning, and that nothing happens at the start of the game like unequal starting positions on a map, nothing unique happening in the game like the first person to find a specific hidden item ends up with making so much of a difference that one player has a strong advantage over everyone else for no reason. But we can also talk about a specific piece of content that's balanced with a specific other piece of content of the same type. A specific item in a MOBA like League of Legends, a specific character in Street Fighter, a specific card in Magic the Gathering, a specific Pokemon in Pokemon. In some cases, you expect these to have some kind of advantage or disadvantage. There are certain matchups in Street Fighter or Smash Bros. Or Pokemon that are clearly favor one character over another when they go head-to-head, and that can be okay, just like rock always loses to paper in rock, paper, scissors, but then the characters favored in those matchups should be disfavored in others. So there isn't a single character that's just strong against everyone. And you also usually don't want the favorable matchups to be so favorable that it's not even worth playing. The underdog should still get a chance. We can also talk about the pieces of content in a single-player PvE game. Maybe you've played an RPG on a computer or console at some point and found that some item or spell or equipment just makes the entire game too easy once you figure it out. Final Fantasy VI, for example, had a well-known exploit where about a third of the way through the game, you found a spell that could make enemies invisible, which made it impossible to hit them with physical attacks, but also made them completely vulnerable to magic. And if you cast that spell and then cast an instant kill spell that normally had a chance of failure, it would always work. Just 2 actions to kill any enemy in the game, including most bosses. So once you figure that out, it made most of the game absolutely trivial if you used it. It's still a single-player game, so using this exploit doesn't harm anyone else, but it also drops the challenge level of the game significantly and invites players to basically optimize the fun out of their own experience. We could also talk about the reverse situation, where a player feels a game is unfairly hard in a way that's frustrating. I remember playing one game. I'll do the developers a favor and not mention which one, but this was a game where you were meant to explore a series of levels, but sometimes pits would just open up beneath you and kill you instantly. There were no clues to their locations, no warnings. You just kind of had to find them through trial and error, and then remember where to avoid stepping. So that when you died, it didn't really feel like you made a mistake or played poorly. It just felt like the designer added an arbitrary death trap for you to step into, which then forced you to replay a half-hour-long level just to get to the point where you could avoid that trap and walk into the next one. And lastly, we can also talk about the balance of different strategies in a game with multiple paths to victory or different victory conditions. In Magic the Gathering, for example, there are 3 general styles of deck. Aggro decks that try to drop game-winning threats quickly and rush to victory before the opponent can get started. Control decks that try to lock the board down and prevent the opponent from doing anything at all, which then lets them reach their victory condition at their leisure while the opponent is stuck and unable to do anything. And then combo decks that use some combination of cards that work together in order to reach some kind of unstoppable victory condition. And there are many ways to implement each of these strategies and some hybrids while building a deck, but at the same time, there's also a careful balance between these play styles. Kind of like rock, paper, scissors, control decks need time to set up a complete board lockdown, so they tend to lose to fast aggro that can overrun them before they get started. But combo decks are more mid-range in that they're designed to get their combo off before the aggro player can finish them, so they tend to work really well against aggro. But combo decks also don't apply enough pressure to the opponent early on to stop a control deck from shutting their entire combo down. So we might say these strategies tend to be balanced with each other, in that if any strategy gets overused, there is a counter strategy for it. But these are also just general deck building strategies, and new cards are rotated in and out of the set of Magic cards all the time. So at some point, there might be a lot of cards printed that support, say, aggro decks, or give them tools to work really well against combo decks, which would then overemphasize aggro as a strategy and throw these three strategies out of balance with each other. Or we could look at a game like Killer Queen, which has 3 victory conditions. You can win a military victory by killing the opposing queen 3 times, an economic victory by returning 12 berries to your hive, or a snail victory by riding the snail at the bottom of the screen to the goal on the opposite side. All of these victory conditions are important enough and can win quickly if your team is completely unopposed by them, that you can't really ignore any of them. And teams are generally just pushing on one of these while guarding just enough against the other 2 to slow the other team down. So we could talk about the balance between these 3 victory conditions and whether any of them tend to happen more or less frequently in order to suggest that teams should always focus on one, or if you need to spread it out and adjust during play. So in this way, we might talk about the balance between strategies or victory conditions. So at this point, we're seeing at least 4 different places where people use the word balance to describe a game or a part of a game. And we might wonder, are we even talking about the same thing here? Or are we just using this one word, balance, to mean lots of different things? And like so many terms in game design, balance is not something that's defined in a dictionary somewhere with a clear definition. It's just kind of arisen organically from use, so the definition can be a bit fuzzy at times. But in this case, I think the answer is yes, we are actually talking about the same thing here between all these things, and that is that players perceive the game to be fair, not unfair. Now, this is a simple definition, but it has 2 important parts, fairness and perception. Both of those are a part of this. So the actual fairness part is the easier part to talk about and design for. For example, maybe you have 10 characters that you've designed in a fighting game, and play data shows that each one wins about as often as it loses, so none of them would seem to have an actual gameplay advantage over the others. In that case, you could say that in reality, the game is perfectly balanced in actual play. But the other part of this is perception. Suppose that in this fighting game that we played, a bunch of players feel like one of the characters is too strong, and as such, it's frustrating to play against that character. Players are complaining about this one character on your game's forums. The player community is convinced this character needs to be nerfed or banned in competitive play. Everyone hates your game because that character is just so hated. Now, mathematically, your game is balanced, but in terms of player perception, it totally isn't. Your players feel like there's an imbalance here. And since you are designing your game for players, those perceptions matter. And in some cases, they can entirely override whether the game is actually balanced or not. If your players feel your game isn't balanced, then it isn't balanced. See what I'm saying here? You get it? And it could be, for example, that this character that is balanced, it has a balanced win rate, but when it does win, it's through a method that's really frustrating. Like maybe they have a move combo that can completely stun the opponent and keep hitting them and keep stunning them so that they can't respond. And it just feels bad. It feels like if they get going, they are unstoppable. And maybe setting up the unstoppable combo is so hard that the character usually can't do it, and they'll lose if they don't. But when they do pull it off, it feels unbalanced to be on the receiving end of that. So if you wanted to reduce the power level of that combo, the problem is you would have to strengthen that character in some other way to compensate, or else they'll end up being too weak. So you have to be thinking about both the actual balance and how players perceive the balance. Now, there are 2 other words we sometimes use when talking about balance. Pacing talks about the difficulty or challenge curve of a game, usually a PvE game, so things like how quickly does a player gain in stats or abilities that allow them to progress, how hard are the levels and bosses relative to each other. right? If you have a game that starts off super easy on level 1 and then has this massive difficulty increase on level 2, it feels like the player just runs into a cliff and there's just no way to scale it. It gets too hard too fast, and that's a pacing problem. You can also have a pacing problem the other way, where the first 20 levels do get gradually harder, but not much. So you're not feeling challenged at all, and you feel like you have to go through a lot of content that you've already mastered just to prove yourself, just to get to the part where it starts to feel a little bit difficult or challenging. We can also use the word pacing to describe a PvP game in terms of how quickly players gain power in the game, like how fast does it take in a game of League of Legends to reach your character's max level relative to the total typical length of the game? It's less of a balance issue. It's more just, whether it's fun. Like in some games, players will hit their peak power level just as the game is ending, so the game feels a bit anticlimactic since you don't really get to enjoy using all your powerful toys for too long. And then we have tuning, which refers specifically to the balance of changing numbers around, like changing the amount of damage a weapon does when it hits, the amount of health that a player gets. Numbers aren't the only place that balance comes from. Some balance comes from the mechanics themselves, like how mechanically some strategies might be supported more just from the nature of the game and how it's put together. So when balancing a game, you usually deal with mechanical imbalances first and get more into tuning later in the process. So now I can talk about this card from Magic the Gathering. It's called Black Lotus. It's a pretty well-known card. It's one of the so-called Power 9, meaning one of the 9 most powerful cards from the original set. It basically breaks the pacing of the game by letting a player play something 3 turns earlier than you'd normally get to. So, for example, playing a spell that's normally balanced for getting played on turn 4 of the game or later, except you use this to play it on turn 1. And as far as Magic the Gathering goes, as a competitive game, this card was highly unbalanced, because just putting it in a deck means a lot of other cards are suddenly unbalanced if you can play them much earlier than they were designed to be played, even if those other cards were otherwise balanced. So Black Lotus is just way above the curve. It's unbalanced. This isn't really much of a question. But this is a game based on Magic the Gathering, except it's a video game for PC. It was called Chandlar. The game played more like an RPG. You travel on an overworld, you accept quests, fight bosses, level up, that kind of thing. There's no other human players. The only difference is that instead of a traditional equipment and combat mechanics, your equipment is a deck of magic cards. Instead of finding loot like in treasure chests, you gain new cards to your collection, and when you fight an enemy, you resolve that combat by playing a game of Magic the Gathering with your deck against theirs. And here's the thing. In Chandlar, right, we're still playing games of Magic the Gathering as combat resolution, but in Chandlar, Black Lotus feels balanced. Now, this is more or less the same game as the one that's played on tabletop against other humans, for the most part. It's pretty much the same cards. It's not like they changed the game so that Black Lotus is no longer powerful. It's still very powerful. You can build some decks with it that are nearly unbeatable. But Chandlar is a single-player game. It's an RPG. It's PvE, not PvP. And as a result, balance takes on different meaning here. With PvE games, particularly RPGs, you're expected to get more powerful over time. Like if you've played any RPG, like a Final Fantasy game or something in the Dragon Quest series, anything like that, at the end of the game, you've got much better equipment and base stats than you did when you first started. The weapons and armor you take into the final boss fight will just be better in every way than the ones you started the game with. But that's okay, it's not an imbalance. It feels fair because you've only got those weapons in the final dungeon, and the point of the game is upward power progression. So of course your equipment is getting better over time. And that's what's happening in Chandlar. The Black Lotus is a very rare card. You only get it very late in the game. And when you do, it makes your deck better, but that just means you can take on more powerful enemies with better decks than you could before. So the point is that balance in a PvP game looks different than a PvE game, to the point that the exact same card can be balanced in one setting and unbalanced in another. So, now that we've talked about what balance is, let's talk about how to actually balance a game. How is this actually done? In my experience, there are 4 broad methods that we use to be able to assess whether something is balanced and then fix it if it's not. The first of these is the most obvious and direct one. The designer goes by feel and just decides on their own if it seems right and makes changes according to what they think the game needs to be. Some designers are very good at this. And your instincts get better with experience because you'll have worked on many games before, so you'll have an immediate feel for what general kinds of numbers and mechanics work in different contexts. And you'll also have a lot of experience with unbalanced games that you might have worked on before that had to be fixed before release, so you know what kinds of things to look for as potential trouble spots and what to do about it when you find them. Now, if you are not a game designer with 40 years of professional experience, your instincts will probably not be quite as sharp, and you'll probably have to rely on other methods to supplement this. But even with a highly skilled designer, using instincts alone is vulnerable to human error, and it's not always reproducible. Different designers, even skilled ones, may disagree on whether a game is unbalanced at all, and if it is, what the best design solution is to fix it. And obviously, this isn't something you can learn just from watching this video or taking a game design class. You have to improve this by making lots and lots of games and gaining that experience. This next one, and we already mentioned this last time, is playtesting, right? Actually having people other than yourself play your game and have them look for balance issues, exploits, overutilized and underutilized strategies or content, and that way you can catch problems right there in the game as it's being played. And this is important. It should probably be part of the plan for just about any game, but I will warn you that playtesting alone will not solve all of your balance issues either. For one thing, it depends on the skill of your testers. Some people are just better at finding balance issues than others, and some balance problems might be just really obscure or hidden enough that they're just missed by all of your testers and might even be unnoticed for months or years after release until one person discovers this odd exploit and then posts it on the internet, and then everyone knows about it. I even worked on a game once where at one point some of our testers found some serious balance problems and then intentionally did not report them to the development team. They tried to hide them because those players were hoping to use those exploits for their own gain in competitive play after our game went live. We actually discovered the issues before release anyway because we looked at their game logs. But just be aware that the results you get from balance testing will be variable, highly dependent on who's testing. So just like relying on designer instinct and experience, the outcome from playtesting is unreliable and not repeatable.
This module is in multiple parts. Thanks for watching this part, and I'll see you in the next part where we'll learn more about this topic in this module.